Before I start my slideshow, I had a great conversation last night with Greg and Tim and a bunch of people at a table, and I realized that there's maybe a better intro to this than I had planned in my PowerPoint. And that is, with this set of ideas I'm going to show to you, I'm trying to do for locomotion what the overtone series does for harmony, what Gestalt grouping principles might do for notions of musical structure, what entrainment, I guess is the word. I'm looking for, like, you know, kind of your internal beat-making neurological equipment does for rhythm. I'm trying to provide a physical, empirical, actual world connection between what happens in music and what happens in locomotion. I believe that locomotion is an unaccounted fundamental of musical experience, but there has been no language for it. So that's the big purposes here. A couple background ideas that are really fundamental also. First is something called the motor theory of perception. It goes by a lot of different names. It's mirror neuron theory. It's called the motor mimetic theory. And again, anyone who's interested in this, you can hit me up later for citations and for scientific literature. I've done a lot of, I've done a lot of work in it, but I didn't really want to throw it all on you. So there's a pretty well substantiated notion that listeners, when we hear sound, we understand an awful lot about what has happened to make that sound. You know, you hear a gong in an orchestral piece, you don't need to see the gong. The vibration, there's something about the vibration that says that's metal that's resonating. You know that a human body has swung something and struck it. So there is a lot of information when we hear instruments that we have implicit about the sound creation action. So that's one theory, one piece of information to put in the background. Another background set of information is that, this is not information. This is something I'm stating because it's fundamental to what I'm trying to do, and I think it's been overlooked. Percussion music, piano playing, requires this incredibly sophisticated coordination of your limbs. Very complicated neurology behind it. And so locomotion and percussion playing both require this kind of signal complexity of limb movement. But there is no theorization that relates these two things. There's no theorization that said the stuff that happens when we do music and the stuff that happens when we do locomotion that use the same human equipment have something to do with each other. That's what I'm trying to supply with this. So there aren't a lot of theories about it. There are, just to be fair to the background research, there's a lot of research on movement and music. There's a lot of the entrainment stuff. There's stuff on breath. There's stuff on brain waves. It's not that there's stuff on gesture, a lot of music theory about gesture. It's not that no one has looked at movement and music, but the looks at locomotion and music are really surprisingly constrained. There are, like Lawrence Zibikowski, really famous scholar, he's done a lot of wonderful things on dance rhythms and music, and so, there's research on dance rhythms, but they're more like these big meta theories, like what does the culture of Baroque dance, how does that inform the music of Baroque dance? And even though there's some musical analysis, it's thin, and there isn't really mid-level analysis that pairs stuff like, structures and rhythms and harmonies to the nuts and bolts of locomotion, which would be gaits and gait transitions and movement qualities. So that's what I'm up to. I got this idea about 40 years ago. When I was living in Berkeley, I bought an African balafon, and I was playing the balafon, and I noticed that the things I was doing with my hands were strangely similar to a set of ideas that were prevalent in the dance community and that I had learned as a dancer. The class this morning, were you all in the modern class that just happened? Okay, so you must use this vocabulary all the time. When she talked about the cross-lateral and head-to-tail connectivity, right, so this is normal parlance in the dance community. I learned it from Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, School for Body Mind Centering, who has this wonderful book on infant-child development, the basic neurocellular patterns. And so both of these sets of ideas, and also the ideas this morning, have been around for a lot of decades and important to locomotors, important to dancers. And I had a revelation. I looked at my hands playing the balafon, and I said, wait a minute, there's something going on here. My hands, I know I'm walking on my legs. I know I locomote on my legs, but I also know I'm a four-limbed animal, and the uppers have something to do with it. It took me a very long time to figure out an approach to it. How am I going to articulate what I feel is similar about locomotion and the piano playing? So this is what in order to come up with it, in order to explain it to you, I have to show you what the basic materials are. So this is Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen's deployment of these ideas. And Laban's is exactly parallel. You know, you don't have to really mess with it. Would you assist me? Would you come on out? So we're going to go through the 4 patterns. And I invite you, I mean, I more than invite you, I implore you. Come down with us. Like, do this. We're going to hit this really quickly. I'm not going to belabor it. And I'll keep holding the mic just for technological purposes. Okay, so come on out, distribute yourself. They are your guides and your models, because they've been through this before. And so you can basically just look at them and imitate what they're doing. And look, if you don't want to come down, that's fine. But it'll be richer if you experience it. All right, so these movements that you're going to do can be contextualized in 2 related ways. One is the process of infant movement development. And of course, we see the babies, right? The baby in every panel. You can also look at it as representative of the animal kingdom, whatever the animal kingdom means to you. There's progressive levels of neurological complexity in the animal kingdom. And these progressive levels of sophisticated brain togetherness, wiring, networking, parallel what the infant puts together throughout early stages of life. So the important thing here is to feel these, right? That your focus should be, as we do these movements, what is it like for me to do this movement? What kind of being do I feel like? What, psychological experiences, frankly, am I having doing these movements? So it's awkward to hold this thing. So what? I'm gonna. Yeah, but do we have to? Is it a recording thing or anything? Am I okay? Oh, cool. Okay, great. Hi, Zoomers. Hi, Spain, Portugal. I'm going to not get you down on the ground because it's going to be complex, all right? So this should be on the ground. The spinal patterning, the idea is you have no limbs, right? You have only a spine. So the question to ask is, what movement does that give you? What locomotion does that give you? So, I mean, you're welcome to hit the floor. You're welcome to lie down and roll, but just like occupy the spine a little bit. Come into it. Those of you who know Steve Paxton used to do this kind of sideways winding thing. And the important thing is, as you take this movement, ask yourself, what kind of being am I moving like this? What characteristics do I have? Is it quiet in my mind? Is it banging around? What is the mind of doing this spinal thing? You can rotate, you can look to the back, but you don't have limbs, so don't cheat like I am. Are you feeling it? You feeling the state? Just give me a word. Are you in that spinal place? Water, yeah, it's got the undulation thing, right? It has that ripply thing. Right. Well, it's a water mirror showing you your stiffness, right? Okay, let's hold that there, all right? So you felt it. The other ones are going to be less subtle to feel, frankly. Homologous patterning. Homologous patterning means in those animals of that stage of neurological development, the lowers are tethered together, the uppers are tethered together. See the frog is boom, into space, reaching with the uppers, propulsive with the lowers. All right, so we're going to play with this with a rule. The rule is Your legs stay together and your arms stay together. Now, I mean, you can start in downward dog and just like, see where you can go as long as they stay together. So deploying this any way you want. When I said start in downward dog, I wasn't giving you instructions. That was a can. You can also simply, you can start in frog. You can do any version and you can just tone on you can like take ideas from your dancers. So let's run this for about 30, 45 seconds. Well, that's an excellent question. No, I didn't. That's not the rule. The rule is the arms have to like thrust together, move together, and the legs have to thrust together. The relation of the head to the tail is up to you. Good, and as you figure out the situation I put you in, don't forget to reflect a little on the room. What's the whole room feel like as everybody else is doing this too? It's different than the spinal room. Oh, Suzanne, I think you're going to launch yourself across the room. I want to see it.
Can you only jump?
No, you can kind of crab, you can scurry, you can like, you could like, there, is that jumping? That's not jumping, that's kind of fair. What? Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, because babies are on the ground and they're reaching up for, their whoever is going to pick them up. All right, that's good. You got a slight feeling of it? We didn't do that very intensely, but you hit it a little bit. All right, with homolateral patterning, this is in some ways the most interesting pattern, because for most animals that use it, it is a transitional pattern. There are very few animals that simply locomote using homolateral patterning. There are ones. Camels do. If you look at a video of camels, you're going to see, yeah, like I'm really going to do that, right? What they will do is, you'll see that the back initiates and pushes the front. Yeah, it's like that for camels. You can trick your body into homolateral initiation by starting with the lower. Even if you're walking, you do that. And the contralateral, you'll see if you start it with the upper, it's going to draw the opposite in. But explore the homolateral, and let me show you one more thing before you get going. I love how eager you are. Let me show you one more thing. It's not limited spatially, right? I can go there, I can root one side, right? And then I have the other side, and I can also take it there, right? So I can really, that was kind of cheating. There. Okay, you can go a lot of places with it. Don't cross the midline. Thank you for saying that, Greg. This is defined by the midline down the center of the body. You only move on differentiated sides of the midline. Differentiate across the midline, not across it, on either side of. Bring the left leg, as your left arm comes across, bring your left leg with it. Yeah. All right, you feeling it? All right, last thing. Because it does, when we make fun of not quite human beings, like Frankenstein, right? So it's like just underneath our full integrated capabilities. And it makes us antsy, like we would like to evolve, right? So the last thing is puzzling because contralateral patterning, which you can trick your body into by reaching first with one upper, that will, in most nervous systems, all humans are a little different, right? Usually, yeah, see how it drew it drew the opposite into play? And we're walking, and here we are. We're contralateral. If you skip, you can really feel it come in. So playing with it now means you might want to start skipping. Come with me. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, I know. Okay, now, as your left foot goes forward, your right arm's going to go forward. Yeah, that's it. You're in it. That's it.
Andy, but reaching the lower limb first doesn't necessarily activate homolateral?
The lower limb first will activate homolateral.
Oh,
All right, let's pause for a second. I didn't say this because I was dancing with Norman. In the contralateral patterning, and in all of these, the movement reality is that once an animal can do any coordination, they have access to the simpler coordinations. So that in the homologous patterning, you're still involved spinally, right? When you're in the homolateral patterning, you can switch to homologous patterning at any moment, and it's incorporated in it. I use the word subsumed. So in the contralateral, you have all movement capabilities, right? It is the full array of possibilities. Now,
a quick question.
Yeah.
So with homologous patterning, you have the split.
Yeah, a head, tail,
head,
upper,
tail,
lower.
And then the homolateral would be a vertical split.
Exactly.
Okay.
Perfectly stated. Okay, now I get to blow your minds. Sit down and let me show you what I made of this. All right, I kind of alluded to this, but in all of these formulations of this, the patterns have affective dimensions. Bonnie calls them pattern minds. Homologous mind, unique states of feeling, yeah. Okay, spinal is watery, undulating, but also, just there in this central column way. Homologous is that force, that projection into space. It's head-tail, it's also forceful. Homolateral, there's differentiation both psychologically. You can be somewhere and reach for something else. It's kind of a this and that relationship. Rather than in the homologous, everything goes together, like boom. Your legs might be leaping, but your hands are reaching. And then in the contralateral, it's omnidirectional, spiralic, all vectors. So this is a background idea for this. I needed to invent a way, and this is what took me decades to come up with. I mean, once I thought about it, it didn't take me decades, but after having this thought for a few decades of there's something here, at a certain point I said to myself, you need to figure this out. You need to articulate what is this connection. And this is the thing I came up with. I decided that I was going to call the movements on the piano by their locomotion pattern names. And I called them strike patterns. So again, that background idea that I'm trusting that the listener will, in some area of our being, identify these physical movements. Homologous strike, the rule is the hands strike together. Well, that's obvious, right? That was the easiest one to figure out. The homolateral gave me hell for years, and now I'm pretty relaxed with it, that it comes in a few different forms. It's not just one thing. And that makes sense because it's such a transitional one. So one of the forms, well, actually, I'm not doing the forms now. I'll show the forms later. The essential idea is differentiation across the midline. The truth is, it can happen in different ways. You can alternate sides. That's one essential way. But I also realized at the piano, if you simply differentiate, if one hand is doing one thing and the other is doing the other, you really have that feeling of you're in two minds. You're on the right side and you're on the left side, and there's no problem. We seem to have that installed in us as long as the situation is simple enough, neurologically and cognitively simple enough, we can just stay on separate sides of the body. But as soon as, there are multiple expressions, as soon as we cross the midline, as soon as accents get passed between the two hands, as soon as there's syncopation between the two hands, we shift into the next neurological condition. That's the contralateral. So those are kind of the basic ideas, and as I said, lower patterns are subsumed into the higher. Let's look at the videotape. So I'm going to show you examples of players in each of these states. You can look at the score. I do wish I'd done longer examples so you could see more of it, but I think it's just enough to see it, and I want to get through ideas quickly. So, thank you. Now, it's gentle, right? It's not forceful, propulsive music. However, the engine of it, the motor engine, is that dum, 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 is the togetherness, the cohesion. Another example of this homologous is you don't need the whole hand to be doing it. Simply a finger on each side, as long as they're aligned homologously, delivers that concision, that focus, potentially forceful energy. Okay. Damian Bassman, who some of you know is a percussionist, incredible percussionist, he and Bill Moulton were very, very kind at the start of this journey to help me develop all these ideas. So there's a little bit of video of Bill and Damian doing different things. Here's Damian. The rules I said is your two hands have to strike together or your 2 feet can strike together. Put a cowbell on one, a tambourine, I don't care what you put them on, but you got to be, your mind has to be homologous. Now, it's really simple. You know, it's very simplistic. But I said to Bill and Damian, all right, you're both in the homologous state. Here are the rules. Hands have to strike together. Now, the confusing thing here can be, there's syncopation between the musicians. There's some musical syncopation. And I just said syncopation is part of the contralateral. So the reason that shouldn't confuse you is it's not the musical syncopation that I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on the presence of movement in the playing actions and saying, proposing to you, that that is a parallel, separate communication from the rhythmic ideas, from the harmonic ideas. The movement information is being given us. So this is informing us of the movement state of the players. And we get something about that in the listening. All right, on to the homolateral. Comes in different forms. What you're listening here for is left hand to right hand to left hand. It doesn't really happen till the middle of the passage. It's kind of alternation, but it's really there. And she's off. Right. So it's just a moment, but I selected it because it's so clear, left to the right to the left. That's homolateral differentiation. Here's an entirely different set of homolateral differentiation, where you're simply alternating the hands throughout the figure. Doom, 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 doom. Forget about the fingers. We're not thinking fingers now. What? Well, yes. That child is very serious. Here's a very clear example. Simply different rhythmic figures in each hand. All right, now notice no syncopation, right? Because I said that's outside of the rules set. Syncopation takes you into the contralateral. So if Beethoven introduced syncopation, he would have been introducing a different mind, a different state. But this passage has no syncopation in it. Here's Bill and Damian. Do we want to hear them? No, I can skip it. I think you got the idea. So moving into the contralateral. Here's Damian with just a kind of circularity, passing messages between the hands. Okay? Very, very simple. Very, very simple ideas in a way. So this is one figure. The chord is being realized by the two hands. You know, left hand plays the bass notes, then you get the rest of the chord delivered by the right hand. So I'm calling the energy, you know, passed between the hands to achieve one idea. Yeah, you can almost see it jump across the midline there. Again, it's all the same ideas. Right hand finishes the left hand's thought. right? I said they're short examples. I apologize, but you're going to get the whole thing. All right, ragtime is contralateral all over the place because you have one hand filling in the missing subdivision of the other hand. So the left hand, in its steadiness, would seem to belie the claim of contralaterality. It's doing something else. It's only between the hands that is contralateral. Because as I realized, do we need more examples? Well, here's an interesting one. If you actually cross hands, you get contralaterality. If you took the two hands and kept them on either side of the piano, it wouldn't be contralateral. It's only that he's actually crossing that makes it that. And my claim is the ear knows. The ear knows that the hand has jumped over, right? If you separated it by octaves and just played the two there, the ear would not have that experience, and there would be no suggestion of contralaterality. All right. Somebody's going to ask me, does this apply beyond percussion? It does. I'm not taking much time with this show right now to show you much on strings, but you can find these ideas on strings. If you, a lot of string playing, particularly for me, who's not a string player, goes by so quickly, I can't, where's my cursor? Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it. And you're looking for the same strokes or alternating strokes. So I had to slow the thing down to half speed to see it. And you can see very clear statement. 3 strokes on the bow for one pitch in the left hand. So there's an analogy to be made here. How convincing it is, I'm like half convinced. Sometimes I hear things sometimes I think, yeah, that's actually really pattern movement that I'm getting in the strings. And sometimes I think, oh, well, your theory is not very complete, is it? Homologous, clearly homologous. Homolateral. Still homolateral, though in the bowing it's contralateral. And then watch what happens between his hands. That's definitely a contralateral moment. All right, so incomplete theorization here. Something to do with strings is possible. All right, so stop. Okay, now, glug, glug, glug. Now's where it gets complicated. At a certain point, I realized that it is possible, yeah, it wasn't complicated before. I realized it would be possible to identify this two-handed thing in a single hand because there is a neuropsychological principle called motor equivalence. Motor equivalence happens when you get out of your car holding your grocery bags, you get to the door, you're not going to drop the groceries to open the door, you open the door with your foot, right? The body understands to make the substitution, and the observer understands that a substitution is being made. The legs have done the work of the hand, right? So in same fashion, a single hand, I am declaring, is sometimes producing a motor equivalence of two hands. And it's pretty obvious if you look at oh, that's not the slide I thought it was. Doesn't matter. Look at her left hand, all right? All the fingers are striking at the same time, and the left hand only, right? Needs another couple measures, but it's a simple idea. Now, I'm going to jump to the contralateral and fill in the homolateral in a minute, because the homologous and contralateral examples are easy. Your mind isn't going to fight with them, but look at his right hand here. Right hand only, not the coordination between the hands. Only in the right hand. Crossing the midline of the hand. Jump right over the midline. Jump, 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 jump. Right? I'm selling it to Suzanne. This is really good. You can also have counterpoint within the hand, where the two sides of the hand are conversing, just like two limbs would converse. And so, again, look at only the right hand. You seeing it? Fast enough? Okay. Now we go to the homolateral, which is a little trickier. And that is because the homolateral has a couple different conditions. It's a transitional coordination. We use it transitionally, and so it's got a lot of strategies, it's got a lot of tricks, it serves us in a lot of ways, but not as singularly as the other patterns. All right, so this is a nice example of the fact that the hand has two sides. It's a very, very clear example of strict alternation between the sides of the hand. It's right there, all right? Now, another alternation is, what? What? What?
Oh, that was not fair. Just a little the next note.
My bad. Within the hand, you're alternating to trill around a posited midline in the hand. Might be between any fingers. Any two fingers. But you have the midline experience, the midline alternation experience, anytime you have trills. Well, not any trill, but, oh, what happened? I think I have to fire this one myself. Jump midline, new midline. So the idea here that's important is this floating midline. This took a long time to figure out that this is what was happening. That, oh, I know I'm hearing homolaterality, but that right hand is dancing all over the place, doing all these things. How could that possibly be? It turns out that most scalar passages are alternation around a moving midline. A lot of times your thumb readjusts, reconfigures, but as best as I can figure, the best concept for me, the way I've been able to explain it to myself, is the midline changes in the hands, but you're still doing things around the midline. This is not homolateral, his left hand. It's actually homologous because it's two fingers hitting at the same time. But the illustration of the floating midline is so clear, I had to put it in. So look at the left hand and watch how the midline changes. So the midline being between those two pitches that are played, it's traveling. And he could play single notes on either side of that midline. It would still be that. All right, we're almost near the end here of like the tough ideas. In fact, you get this? Can I blip forward? You basically understand these categories? All right, let me just cover more things. I have more lovely examples. But here's a summary. Here's what I've done so far. There are principles of two-hand strike and principles of one-hand strike, and you can reduce them to rules, which you can easily give to a player. Now, this is a little bit, oh, good for me. You see the homolateral? I've given 3 different homolateral conditions. So this is my main toolkit for the work that I'm trying to do with it. 2 other ideas that you got to see, and where are we with time? We're good. At a certain point, Greg, where's Greg? How did we get to this last night? We got onto this. No. You asked me about, is there a language here? He said, does this parallel language? Because you are talking about these rules that are working together. And I said, yeah, this really, for me, has been a language to figure out. But what are the principles of this language? By what natural order, by what natural set of ideas does one pattern follow another when musicians are playing? Or is it just whenever you want to use anything, you use it? Well, look, with harmony, whenever you want to use something, you use it, right? But there's something else at work weighing in on how we behave harmonically. There's the overtone series at work, there's like whatever set of ideas, but the world is choosing our harmonies to some extent. So I asked, in what way is the world choosing our locomotion movement deployment? And the answer is really simple. Look at movement acquisition in babies. There's a sequence already in us of movement from homologous to homolateral to contralateral. So what are the implications of this for, I said all this, great. What are the implications? I called movement in one direction. In the more complicated direction, I called that upshift. And moving back towards a simpler pattern, I called it downshift. And I looked for evidence in passages of shifts between locomotive content And I just said to myself, what is it? Is it consistent? Does it produce the effect that I think it's going to produce? And I have simple examples, but I'm actually giving you a more complicated one because it's more interesting. So in some of these passages, like here we're going to see a shift. The pianist is in, another idea. When you downshift, the sensation should be consolidation, simplification, grounding, kind of a gathered force. When you upshift, it's in the opposite direction. It's expansion, it's complexity, it's taking off, it's firing into space. So what you should hear in this passage is a repeated consolidation as the patterns shift. Let me just circle some things for you. I don't remember the excerpt. I think it maybe starts in here in this figure, but that's red. Oh, red is contralateral, green is homolateral, blue is homologous. You can't see the blue very well on this screen. And that's important because I'm going to show you something using these colors in a minute. So what happens here is you're in this contralateral, homolateral, juxtaposed space. I'm going to talk about juxtaposition in a second too. But you're in a contralateral-y thing there, and then you hear a quick convergence in the homolateral there. And then it stays in the lower part of the order. It's a little blip back to homolateral, and then it keeps converging on the contralateral. Do you see that thing? Yeah, here we go. Well. Bass notes. We're in the contralateral world. Collapsing to the homologous, a little bit of a blip to the homolateral. Right? So many pieces converge on the homologous for endings, for cadences, for all kinds of reasons. But the convergence on the homologous, it's not just at endings and cadences. It's used, it's just particularly in common practice works. This language is really convincing. Whoops. Opposite direction here. Next one. Oh, this is really fascinating. This is one of the coolest things that I found. Beethoven does this as a trope. Beethoven will often give you a theme stated homologously and then immediately develop it contralaterally. I thought, okay, this is cool. I saw it all over Beethoven, and I thought, but I'm going to find it in Haydn and Mozart too, right? Aren't I? I went through every Haydn and Mozart piano sonata. I think there was one instance in one, it wasn't there. It was a Beethoven trope. He does it, nobody else does. I mean, go prove me wrong. I went through all of them. Here's what it sounds like. And when you hear it, you're gonna recognize it as a Beethoven thing. This is what the guy does. All right. So I think this is my last example of this set before we take off into something else. So this one's complicated. I mean, meaning that there are a lot of things in it. So the idea is you start with the downshift, right? Then you do that jump up to contralateral, the HC that we just heard with the Beethoven, and that's going to happen in the second system. And then a long downshift through to the middle of the last system. We're going to close on the homologous again. But you can feel the actions. You can definitely feel the pattern actions. Slight bump up with the syncopation, drop down. We're going to sit in the middle zone, sitting in that homolateral, all the tension of the homolateral, even a trill in it. You get homolateral and collapsing. Okay? I call this pattern syntax. Whoops. Because it has to do with what follows what, like word order. And so the natural question was, all right, if there's a pattern syntax that I can establish kind of organically, what about pattern semantics? What about the meaning of juxtaposing two patterns? And now we're getting into the frontiers. We're getting to like what I understand and what I don't understand. The word would be superimposition. Superimpose patterns on each other. And when the dancers join us, we're going to be playing with pattern superimposition. And I'm opening my questions up to you at that point. But let me show you a little bit of why I think it is possible to identify a semantics of pattern juxtaposition. And of course, this would be cross-modal, dance, film, all of these things would involve pattern superimposition, as well as syntax. All right, so les noces. Bill Moulton's hands, that's nice, I didn't think of that. So we're playing the homologous and homolateral piano parts, right? The green is homolateral, strict alternation. The right side is homologous, except for some grace notes, except for a little bit of ornamentation. It's basically homologous impulse. So if you superimpose them on each other, and what you're listening for is that a thing? Is that a thing to put homologous and homolateral together? That's what I'm posing. There's the homologous. Two hands together. And the reason I think it's a thing is if you look at the dance, the choreographer harvests no contralaterality, all right? And by the way, what I'm saying is not prescriptive. Nothing I'm saying is prescriptive. You can do whatever the hell you want creatively. There are all kinds of reasons to mix patterns. And when I show you a ballet class, like at the bar, ideas at the bar, we are going to be close to time here. I want to explain less stuff. Just look at the video. There's homolaterality and contralaterality all over the time. That's a homolateral idea. You're prioritizing one side of the body. That's a homologous idea, right? Homologous uppers pushing. And even the stage arrangement, that symmetry, like two sides of the body. So it's like Bronislaw Nijinsky, took instructions from the composers. You will now behave homologously and homolaterally. There are your ideas. Okay. I promised updates. All this stuff was in place a number of years ago, the last time I talked to you. So what have I done since then? And I forgot, because Owen told me I was speaking, and I said, really? I'm speaking now? So I didn't prep one thing for you. Let me just do this. So what I have been doing in the last years with this work is I did an intense analysis of a bunch of Beethoven sonatas. And so you can see, I have boxed, I've analyzed everything separately. I've analyzed right hand, left hand, and I've analyzed their two-hand relationship to each other, because it's got that number of layers. And when we're getting pattern ideas from the music, they could come from anywhere. They could come from one hand, the other hand, they could come from the two-ness of the hands together. It turns out that that's a very complicated thing to assess. And, but if I scroll through, which one was this? Waldstein? Yeah. This, and I did the Hammerklavier, I did Opus 7, I did a bunch of Beethoven sonatas, and even just looking at the colors, you can see right away, you can tell the story of a sonata through its pattern movement usage. You can, find characteristic development schemes. You can weight the usage in different sonatas. I even went across the works, analyzed all the works. I analyzed the pattern movement usage in each work. And I assigned percentages of movement in different parts of the sonata. I know I'm a nut. If you look at pattern movement combinations, which is two hands, right hand, two hand, left hand, right hand, there are either 20, depending on how many homolateral varieties you consider, there are between 27 or 45 combinations that you could entertain, that you could call your pattern movement vocabulary. I have not subjected anyone to that in terms of learning or trying things, but analytically, that's what you would need. And so you see on the left side here, I've analyzed the pattern movement usage of all the different combinations, and you can tell the difference between these works. I'm not going to dig in, but you can just see it in a moment. Like, look at contralateral usage in homolateral usage in this work and that work, right? Where's the contralateral? Where's this really loud one? So look, Opus 106, hammer clavier, 32% contralaterality, right? Waldstein, 12% contralaterality. That's a big statement to be able to make about the movement content of a classical work. So some of my work has been in analysis. That's what, and then I'm an analysis. No, I'm not an analysis. I'm giving you a quick rundown on like what I've been doing with this work, right? So that's one thing. Another thing is I've done a certain amount with dance musicians. I started this project, I'll detail this in a minute. Stuff at the ballet bar, how does this stuff work at the ballet bar? What would be a pattern movement syllabus? Nobody's going to learn 45 different pattern combinations, but what can you learn, and what can you work with, and what can you play? And then also there's something that I hope to demonstrate quickly with John. Yes, we will get to it. I'm going to call it REF, not RBF. Done a certain amount with how could you compose with this? You know, what would notation look like? What would mixing different ideas, including, I have this really great idea of using, y'all know Butch Morris, the jazz player, his conduction techniques? Anybody know that stuff? This would be really, really helpful. You could interject these ideas into those things. And I have video of this stuff. I don't know, we'll get to it. I realized that this stuff is so intensely heady, the analysis that I've done, it can't live like that. It's just not practical like that. So I realized a few years ago, when I'm working with dancers, when I'm teaching dancers to do this, we're not going to look at a score and analyze it. I have to acknowledge the fact that our brains are analogous, they are pattern reading machines, the motor mimetic theory, yeah, that's real, but metaphor and analogy are also real. And a lot of this communication is happening through like analogization of like imaginary agents who are producing sound. Anyway, so there's a bunch of theory recognizing that you got to just go with what you hear in this a bunch of the time too, and that there's reason to just go on the pattern movement that you're hearing. So I'm really involved in trying to conceptualize pattern movement superimposition, including this kind of goofy way that I've come up with wordgrams. I'm still working on different things about downshift and upshift, including nonlinear dynamics of it, like attractor states and all of this, physics, basically. I really would love for somebody to collaborate with me to do neuroimaging on this, because you could look at both from the receptor and the producer states, what activation are we getting? And people don't really know where central pattern generation happens in the brain, but there's enough of the nervous system that you can image that I think a good neuroscientist would find plenty to play with here. And I've read enough by now to know, let's talk about this first. And then I want to make an AI bot for pattern identification. I want to feed in the score, and that shouldn't be the hardest thing to do. My son, who plays around with this stuff, said, oh, you could definitely do that.
Have you used it at all for the analysis that you've already done, just fit it in?
No, because you would have to do the same. You'd have to do the same, building of the engine to recognize, and I haven't asked. No, because this is not knowledge that could have been. No machine could be trained on this. It's not. I mean, there are my articles out there. If you ask Google, like, where Google keeps telling me that I'm doing, or ChatGPT, which is trying to flatter you all the time, right. Tells me I'm filling a research gap. I'm like, really? Are you sure I'm filling a research gap? Okay, and also, I'm doing residencies now. And those of you who are on Zoom abroad, I am now at a stage of my life, I want to go places and work with people and push these ideas. I want to work with ensembles of musicians. Working with dancers is easy because I love dancers, and I get dancers, and I can work with dancers like that. But I want to work with groups of musicians to push this, to see in what sense is this an intelligible language, how can it be used in a number of ways so that it's real and comfortable for people. That's kind of that's my frontier. All right, so dance musicians. Remember Kim Helwig? He was here in 2015. So after that, Kim said, we're going to do a residency. We're going to do a big thing with dancers and musicians in Denmark. And he had his master's program. And he hired me to write this article for him. So I wrote a big thing on using this in dance accompaniment. After I sent it to the school, he said, oh, it's great. We're going to publish it. They cut him and they cut his program. So it never got published. So I have this body, I have all this work I've done on working with dancers and dance musicians. I need to publish the thing somewhere. And this included the pattern movement syllabus thing. But I started to do a project at Marymount where I was filming ballet bars and asking myself, what does this have to do with what happens at the bar? And I'm going to show you a little bit of that. Then we'll go right to these guys. And then I also had, I started to develop a framework of how the musician relates to the dancers. And this goes beyond this theory. This is just plainly what you do as a musician to relating to the dancers. I wanted to simplify it for myself so that I could give instructions to somebody using pattern movements that wouldn't blow their minds. And I kind of boiled it down to what I always did as an accompanist, particularly in comp classes. I could summarize as I either reify what's happening in the dance, I reinforce it, I do it with them, I join them, it's some kind of like energetic, there you are, here I am thing. Or I was in some kind of exchange with the dancer, whether it's call response or like, there was a back and forth of some kind. And then a separate modality was, I'm not actually really referencing what's happening moment by moment with them. I'm providing a frame. I'm providing, David Gordon calls it an atmosphere. So I thought I used this simple framework of REF to kind of cue what the accompanist should be doing with the dancers. Anyway, I think I'm going to go pretty much to that. And again, I've been doing residencies. Do we have, if I show one more thing, do we have 10 minutes after that to play with this? Yeah. Okay, good. So here's the thing, and this is a super small example, but let's look at frappes, right? The first thing I did is I went to all these frappe examples on the web, and I just said, well, what kind of, what's usually happening with frappes? It's homolateral. It's unequivocally homolateral. Differentiated information from each side. So I'm going to skim here. I have like 4 or 5 examples. They're all homolateral. Frappe, classical frappe after frappe. There's sometimes a little bit of a little bit of syncopation, like a little bit of contralaterality. And so I said, all right, the sweet spot for frappes, if I'm a dancer at the bar, is I basically want a homolateral support, but you can keep it fresh with some contralaterality and even a tiny bit of homolaterality, but that weighs things down. So then I went to the web and I said, okay, show me a few professional studios where they're modeling frappes for the world to do, and like show me high-level professional things. And here is a couple of different examples.
Nice sharp frappes. Double.
Dum bum dum bum. Right? It's really like inarguable. I went over a lot of examples, but then I tried to find something that was an outlier. And so here is what happens with the dancer when the accompanist provides contralaterality rather than the homolaterality. This exercise seems to historically ask for. Now, before I show you this example, it's really critical. This is not prescriptive, what I'm doing. I'm not saying you should play homolaterally every time someone does frappes. And God knows I'm not saying in a creative situation that you should be providing this kind of movement pattern for that kind of, because I'm not interested in that. Nobody's interested in that. I'm trying to describe what seems to be an underlying principle that fortifies the body. Homolateral music does. Here's what happens to the body when the player is contralateral. I don't know, you may love it, you may think it's great, but whatever. Actually, it's looking quite nice to me right now. But it also seems to me that it drifts a little bit. It's got a little, and this is a subtlety that I'm reading, right? It's not pushed in the same way as it is by the contralaterally. Perfectly acceptable aesthetic choice, but it's a little bit different presence with the body. Let me keep playing this because I think I have 2 examples.
Double fronts. Good God knows fit.
Still, and still. Double single double, single.
That's just not well supported in a lot of different senses, right? I mean, it corresponds rhythmically. You know, the beats are there, but the information to the body about you have a standing leg and you have a working leg, which is what homolaterality signals. There's a standing side and a working side in homolaterality. So this is like one of a lot of different projects with this thing. And I would say not so much the most developed project either, because I started doing this at Marymount and the pandemic hit and it just crashed and I didn't take it up again. So it's been many years since I've thought about this, but I did start to think about it. Okay, would you join us, please? So I asked these wonderful people to make a few studies. Would you show us the homologous study? And the question I'm asking here is, what's pattern superimposition about? So yeah, oh right, three of you on. Okay, so now we're going to see a homologous study, and yeah, thanks. Again, I know you love to count, right? Yeah, do it without counting. You'll just on energy. Great. Pleasing study, right? Just very intelligently, lovely played. And you hang with it in every way you want to with an elementary piece of music. All right, so you have a homolateral study? Is that what it is? Let's look at the homolateral, and then we're going to get John in here and play with some different things. Very Dorothy Humphrey, right? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so the state is clear, right? All right, so let's drop John in, and the game to play here is reify, reinforce, exchange, or frame. Now, the truth is, I had them make a few different studies. They did these, and then they did 2 pattern studies, so maybe we have those to work with too. We're only going to have a few minutes. Let's look first at you reifying each study. Let's put homologous playing. Your hands are locked. John has no idea. He's never done this. He's never done this. Yeah, I know. I don't remember the word. The truth is, the second word should not begin with an H. It should be ipsilateral. But after you publish a lot of things, it's really hard to, it's confusing.
I just want to say we probably have a little more time. We have 20 minutes till the scheduled time. We even got started a little bit late, so don't.
Oh, we did start a little bit. Okay. Look, just tell me you're done, whatever. All right. Okay. We'll look at a few things. Let's see what happens.
So,
You're playing homologously. You can even close your eyes. You don't need to look.
Homologously, but am I reifying or?
The claim is by simply playing homologously, it will be a reification of the pattern usage. You don't even need to look at them. You don't need to do all the accompanist things you know how to do of joining them energetically. My claim is the locomotion pattern information alone will be reifying.
Okay.
Okay? So you don't need to worry at all about what you play, as long as your hands are not locked together. Okay. And you can start whenever you feel like starting after he starts. Let's see what happens. Great, great. All right. Can I say point proved? Like it hangs on the basis of the movement information, whatever else is in the picture. You know what would be cool? No, let's see the homologous, the homolateral. Let's see what happens here. This will be more interesting. What are we going to do?
Did you want to do the gavotte?
Let's do the gavotte. Yeah, okay. So, homolateral Bach. Let's see what happens.
I remember how it goes. Okay.
Doesn't matter so much. Don't count, just do. Do it again. Keep going. And begin again. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
Totally screwed that up.
No, you didn't, because you preserved the homolaterality.
I completely screwed up the notes. Let's say that.
We're so attached to all the other components of music,
Yeah.
right? We're attached to the harmonies, the melody lines, the rhythms, all of that. I'm saying no. There's an entirely, as long as you get the motor action right, the locomotive action right, there is some content relationship here.
Okay.
So try one or two more things. Okay. So now let's leave it to John. These studies, the next thing they did is they built studies with two things. What I didn't do with you, because I didn't know it to do it, it would be cool if one of your studies like had some pauses in it or some space in it, creating the opportunity for energy exchange, or he could play with you. I think that's a little bit beyond us to just try and hit right now. I think we should use one of the two pattern studies. Do both groups have one ready to go, or just one group? Both? All right, well, who wants to go? Okay, hit it. So you added a second pattern. We don't know what the second pattern is, right? All right. So, John, there's no way to reify the entire thing. You know, you could be watching it and choose to reify, but I don't know what their second pattern is. Why don't you play contralaterally, since we haven't heard that yet? So put the syncopation in, and then so what we're going to have is, they may have contralateral elements. I don't even know. Do you? What was your second? Your homologous. And okay, so we're going to have two different superimposition elements against contralaterality. That's fine. Let's just look at what it is. Ah, good. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Something interesting happened with the contralateral against the homologous, right? Right. That was the moment it gelled into something. Right.
They went on the floor.
Right. So I've been when they went on the floor. I've suspected there's something I haven't articulated or known quite how to explain yet about the contralateral and the homologous relationship. You know, as I look for pattern semantics, I know that there's something there to understand that I don't quite get yet.
Thing about it, like
The distal.
I'm saying, is there like a core distal thing that's doing?
Let's stop and do questions and comments, right? So we have a minute for that. I think that would be a better thing to do, so we can hear you expound on that. And maybe just like to even it out, let's bring the second group in.
What was interesting about that is that when I was coming to an end, I did homologous. Just kind of
Spontaneously, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's locked into us
Yeah.
to do that. So, I think a simple thing to do here would be to watch it.
Okay.
Watch it and pick whether you are reifying, you know, deliberately reify something in what you're seeing,
Okay.
and then deliberately frame.
Okay.
Okay? I don't know that it lasts long enough, but let's see. As long as you don't count, you're doing it perfectly.
This is in silence first?
I don't know.
Oh, you said watch it, so I didn't know.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to give directions. I said for John to, oh, no, not to watch the whole thing. Just do it, seeing what he's got. Immediately either reifying or deciding to frame something differently. Yes, thank you. I really appreciate you all throwing yourselves in like this. It's been so helpful, so thank you very much. And you know I appreciate you like big time. So, well, I think that we call it here. If we have time for questions or comments, Owen, we can. Yeah, we're good.
I was curious what their experience was with the music, if anything. Did you feel anything different from class or from what you normally experience?
For me, typically we just give the instruction of like a 5, 6, 7, 8, and then go and do the movements. To clearly hear, do not count at all, and just kind of go with it, was a different physical feeling and also an emotional feeling at the same time, because it's like, I don't know where to start, but because music is already going, I could just decide whenever we could start, because I kind of started the whole art group. And so just feeling how the music can incorporate into just rhythmic movement of the swinging and also moments of pausing was really interesting. So it just kind of correlates to how can I, as a performer, bring some form of the same energy as the pianist brings to the space.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting, particularly in the last time that we did our study, the contralateral music with the homologous movement felt so natural, and I thought that was very interesting. And it was just very cool to hear how it sounded contralateral and sounded homologous.
You know, you're asking the question that I'm interested in also. Like, the question is, how does that work? Or why? Or under what conditions? Or like, you know, but there, can I just show one other slide? So as I've tried to get my mind on this, one of the things I've come up with, yeah, maybe turn the light off. What's the, all right, these are, you know, trying to combine it with other musical information to make score information so that you could, you know, you could play the patterns. The stripes things, those are indications of you know, pattern movement that I'm juxtaposing with, you know, pitch collections or chords or dynamics instructions or whatever. But what I really want to show you, oh, and this thing is really cool. Here's Butch Morris doing his conduction thing, and Wayne Horvitz, a Seattle jazz pianist, has this list of all the cues that Butch Morris gives when he conducts his jazz orchestras, and you could so easily have cues for pattern movement. This is like low-lying fruit for this methodology. But the thing that I want to show you is this. I started to play these things and a few different times of the day and ask myself, are they the same thing all the time? And then I started to give them like these word grams, like homolaterality always feels like you're in the field of gravity, all right? And as you know, they're totally goofy and they're just like me saying what they are. But one project I would like to do is, you know, amass some data, like have a lot of people do this and see if there is a resemblance between the state that this convenes for different people. Is there any kind of language-like consistency in the way that these things signal? And that's like 9 of them there. I did all 47 of them, and some of my sentences are like 4 clauses long with angels and the earth opening up, and it's like entirely wild associations. And I'm saying, is that really the state of this? I was like, yeah, I think that's the state of it for me. So you could do this, and then another investigation like this is you simply put the pattern in your body, right? Upper half gets one thing, lower half gets another. What's the state? How are you going to describe it? And the question is, will this be reliable enough so that I can say, this pattern's always going to deliver this kind of thing? Could I use it with vocabulary? There is a lot to investigate here, which is why I want to make my final pitch. Those of you on Zoom in other countries. So I was in Latvia this summer at the conservatory in Latvia. I just got an invitation from the person who directs the Dance Academy in Rome to go there for up to 3 days or a week or something and work with their dance musicians and work with their dancers. There's someone in Kern. All over Europe, I'm starting to get people. I can go to Krakow. There are a bunch of places that I think are willing to sponsor an investigative period. That's what Kim was going to do at the Danish School of Music and Dance before he lost his program. So I'm really looking for opportunities to do this. And if you have an institutional connection or somebody who might be interested, I think the next developmental step is work a couple days to a week of work sessions with musicians to see how expansive, how practical is this language? What can you do with it? What are its limitations? What's really interesting about it? When is it too technical and heady and it's doesn't make music happen? Because you don't want to constrain music because we got a bunch of neat ideas. There's no reason to make things technical and difficult. What I want to do is add these ideas to the way that people already make music, the way they already play, and see what else they can facilitate. I think that's it. Thank you all.
I found that when I was trying to reify what was going on,
Yeah.
I was using, when they were doing their homolateral study, I was using similar movements on the piano to what was going on in their movement. And I wasn't even thinking about it, but I was kind of watching.
She pointed out in the modern class.
Yeah, what I was doing was supporting your ideas of movement. Music,
and complementing them, because I want to be really careful. These ideas are narrow in a sense. Right. They're very narrow, and they're in partnership with a lot of other ideas to actually make music.
It was interesting to notice my pattern of movement following theirs.
Yeah. Plugging Greg's talk. We talked a lot of time last night. I think what you're going to talk about is complementary in a really interesting fashion to this. Looking forward to that. Okay, thank you all.